Hello and welcome to the review. This week we'll be taking a behind-the-scenes look at a new film that ran in our Al Jazeera World Series about the plight of Somali refugees in Yemen. But first, here is a reminder of what you've been watching, clicking and sharing on Al Jazeera over the past 7 days. Take a look.
On the street where the raid took place, police stand guard. Buildings bear the marks of a fierce gunfight. The raid left 2 suspects dead. A third was arrested.
Over 2,100 dead, almost 500 of them children. The war in Gaza made 2014 the deadliest year for Palestinians since 1967. Now the very first stage of a legal process that could see war crimes charges launched.
Crowds of men gathered outside a church in Niger's capital, Niamey. They were angry about the depiction of the Prophet Muhammad on the cover of the French satirical newspaper Charlie Hebdo.
The fighting is being heard from blocks away. Government forces and Houthi rebels have been battling near the presidential palace in Sana'a since early on Monday. The declaration of a ceasefire earlier in the day has been largely ignored.
A few thousand people turned out for the funeral of Jihad Mughniya. He was one of 7 men killed in an Israeli airstrike in Syria on Sunday. 6 of the men killed were from the Lebanese armed Shia group Hezbollah.
U.S. President Barack Obama used his speech to the nation to highlight the areas where he and the Republicans in charge disagree the most. On foreign policy, the president did get both parties to voice their approval on the issue of terrorism.
We stand united with people around the world who've been targeted by terrorists, from a school in Pakistan to the streets of Paris.
So this week we've been behind the scenes with a new film on Al Jazeera, Trapped in Yemen. It tells the story of Somalis fleeing the civil war at home for over 20 years, only to be confronted by poverty, kidnapping and torture as they seek refuge in Yemen. It was a complex and difficult story that gave many challenges to the production team. Here's a little taste of what they faced from filmmaker Muhammad Umar in Yemen.
Tires on the southern coast of Yemen. A small boat has arrived on the beach, carrying a group of Somali refugees. Exhausted, hungry, and dehydrated, they need medical treatment after an arduous journey.
الحقيقة فريق العمل بذل جهد كبير في إنتاج هذا الفيلم.
Our team put a lot of effort into the production of this film. We face security difficulties in Somalia and Yemen. However, we did our best to find characters that would tell the whole story. We filmed for an entire month in both Somalia and Yemen. We covered 80 to 90% of the Yemen coast, recording the hopes and suffering of the Somalis from the moment they arrived.
According to the UN, there are around 250,000 registered Somali refugees currently living in Yemen, but the actual number could be even higher.
وصلنا حتى الحدود السعودية وفي بعض الأحيان واجهتنا صعوبات كبيرة.
We reached the Saudi border. We faced many difficulties shooting this film, especially near the Yemeni coast, much of which is a military zone, and sometimes we were forced to stop filming. We also had problems with the authorities, but in general, the Yemeni government and a few other organizations helped make our task easier.
This is the Kharaz refugee camp, where large numbers of Somalis have been living for 13 years. For some, it's a permanent home, where they've got married and had children.
There are many provinces in Yemen, and it was a challenge to cover all of them. The film follows certain characters from the moment they arrived. We had to wait for a long time for them, since we didn't know where they would be dropped off. They were smuggled in, and the smugglers used different drop-off points. It takes time to trace them and film them. In addition, most of the Somalis are afraid of cameras. They don't understand why they're being filmed. It takes a lot of effort to convince them to tell their stories.
Raha Sharif Abu Bakr is a mother of 8 who arrived in Yemen from Somalia in 1991.
Despite the problems and the long distances between the cities, we managed to cover the most significant aspects of the film by the end of the month.
Hazardous sea journeys, serious hardship, and a vicious cycle of people smugglers and human traffickers. Many refugees feel they'd be better back in Somalia and decide to go home.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week. Please keep those comments coming on Facebook, Twitter, and our webpage. We'll be highlighting them next week. And of course, you can always send us a video comment on our main page, www.aljazeera.com/review. We look forward to hearing from you. And remember, next time you could be on the review.